Thank you for coming to this training today. I'm super happy you guys are here. Today I'm going to be talking to you about purchasing gluten-free foods. So first, by a raise of hands, how many of you have kids in your school districts that have either celiac disease or have some kind of gluten sensitivity or intolerance? All right, yeah, so every hand went up. This is a super common problem, and it's important that we order foods that really are gluten-free. And to demonstrate just how difficult that can be, I have this little bag, and in this there's a breadcrumb. I want you to pass that around. That little tiny breadcrumb is the amount of flour or gluten that it would take for somebody with celiac disease to get sick if they were to eat that either by cross-contamination or by directly eating a food with gluten in it. So by the end of today's training, you guys will be able to express which food product labels indicate that an item is gluten-free. You will also be able to find good resources to order gluten-free foods, and you'll be able to take a menu item that typically contains gluten and find an appropriate substitute for kids that eat a gluten-free diet. Oops. All right, so first, to get us started, I want to give a little background knowledge on some of the gluten-free labeling rules. So the FDA labeling rule is that if a food package says gluten-free, no gluten, free of gluten, or without gluten, that food must have less than 20 parts per million of gluten in it. So this is a good starting point. Most people with a gluten sensitivity or with celiac disease can tolerate this amount of gluten, so if it has one of these labels on it, that's a great start. And on top of that, there are third-party labels that will come in and further verify that a product really is gluten-free. So if a manufacturing company makes a product and they want to verify it's gluten-free, they'll send it to an outside company who will test that product for gluten, and then they will put their stamp of approval, which is one of these labels, such as certified gluten-free, NSF certified gluten-free, the Celiac Support Association tests a lot of products, and the National Foundation for Celiac Awareness also tests a lot of products. And most of these labels indicate that the product has less than 10 parts per million, which is a little bit better than the FDA rule requires, so these may also be helpful labels for you to use. Now, I hope you were paying attention because I want you to write down 3 labels that you should look for as you're looking to purchase foods for kids who cannot eat gluten. I'll give you guys just a second to do that. And just put your pencils down when you're ready to move on. And if you need me to go back, please just raise your hand and I can go back to the previous slides and review what I went over. All right, are we good to move on? Okay, so before we get into our activity, I do want to give a word of caution. There are many products that are labeled gluten-free. There's also many products that don't even have wheat or a gluten-containing grain in the ingredient list that may be contaminated with gluten. This is something we really have to watch out for, especially things like oats. They don't have gluten in themselves, but most of the time they are contaminated with gluten. So when we're looking at products, if it doesn't have that gluten-free label on it, but it doesn't have any ingredients that contain gluten, we want to make sure we check that the manufacturer does not also process wheat-containing items. So we can contact manufacturers directly to get this information, or a lot of the times on a food label, it may say processed in a facility that also processes wheat. And if that is the case, we want to try our best to avoid those products because there is a risk for cross-contamination. All right, so we're going to practice. My bullet points up here are a couple of different companies that provide some great gluten-free options. Most of the time when we're ordering for our kids who are gluten-free, we're doing it in a much smaller quantity and they're more specialized products. So I find these resources to be helpful. So I want you to pick one of these and you can just go ahead and Google it. Just Google, like, for example, Barilla gluten-free, which will direct you right to the gluten-free products. And I want you to take a look around the website, and I want you to examine the website and be able to tell me, how can you tell if this website or this company would be a good resource for buying gluten-free items? If any of you have trouble navigating to a website, please raise your hand. I would love to come and help you. And I'll just walk around and make sure that everybody is able to find their way to a website and navigate to the gluten-free section. And we'll just have 2 minutes to do that.
It's supposed to be see-through?
Yes. Are you able to find the gluten-free section? Okay, awesome. All right, just 1 more minute to keep on exploring your websites. All right, let's go ahead and bring it back together. So I want you to tell me, what did you find on the website that you looked at that would indicate it's a good resource for ordering gluten-free foods?
Thing across the front that says gluten-free.
Okay, yeah, so it stated that it was gluten-free. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Certified gluten-free.
Certified gluten-free. Yeah, so some of those labels we talked about previously were on those food products. Those are great things to check for as we begin looking for products to order. Okay, so we now have some websites that we can use to look for gluten-free items, but we can't just take any gluten-free item and feed that to a child every single day. We want to, as closely as possible, match our original menu with the dietary requirements that a child may have. So, for example, if the menu is spaghetti and we feed a child with celiac disease a baked potato, those are 2 very different things, and they may stand out in front of their peers and feel uncomfortable because they are eating a completely different meal than what their peers are being served. But by contrast, if the menu item is spaghetti and they are served a gluten-free noodle as part of their spaghetti, and it looks similar to what their peers are eating, it may help them feel less isolated and more cared for. So I want you to continue exploring your website that you previously found, but this time I want you to think of a menu item that is typically served at your school, and then I want you to find an appropriate substitute for that menu item. One that is gluten-free and closely matches the original item. I'll give you guys just a couple of minutes to do that. And again, if you have questions, please raise your hands. I would love to help you find an item that you could use to replace your traditional menu item. Alright, I'll give you just a couple more seconds to finish up finding that appropriate menu replacement item. And then we'll have a little discussion. Alright, if somebody would be willing to share, what was the menu item you chose, and then what food product did you find to replace that?
I'm on Revila's website, so if you're doing just a classic lasagna, they have a lasagna noodle that is gluten-free that you could substitute.
Great, gluten-free noodles for the lasagna would work awesome. Anybody else have anything to add? Okay, great. So this was a basic overview. I hope you came away with some good resources that you can use to continue shopping and procuring gluten-free foods for our population that needs them. And I hope that you'll be able to appropriately substitute those items in your menu as needed, because as you have all experienced, this isn't an issue that's going away, and we need to be able to appropriately accommodate these students and help them to meet the NSLP nutritional requirements while still avoiding gluten. So thank you so much for listening. Does anybody have questions before we finish up?
What is NSLP?
The National School Lunch Program.
Does the nutritional value of gluten-free products mimic closely gluten? I mean, do you know?
It depends on the product. So like pasta, like we were talking about, for example, chickpea pasta, which is made out of chickpeas, is an option. There's also some that are made from like rice flour or potato flour. So they're not exactly, especially with the chickpea, that tends to have more protein in it and a little more fiber. But some of the other gluten-free pastas that contain like the rice flour, potato flour are relatively similar to traditional pastas. All right, thank you so much for coming to our training today. I hope you learned something and have a great rest of your day.